Sandstorm.
Hello there, my name is Gary. I'm the co-founder of a funny thing called Tom and Gary's Decentralized Dance Party. Thanks for coming out and expressing your interest in this thing. Not quite as prepared as I'd like to be. We drove 30 hours straight to get here. They almost didn't let us over the border. They saw these stereos and they thought we were trying to work. But we sweet talked them, got in here, and here we are. So this is a very unique, multifaceted, and revolutionary thing we have on our hands. It takes a while to explain, but the initial thing to understand is how a DDP works. And it's basically, on my back, I wear a high-powered FM radio transmitter. We have hundreds of boom boxes that are all tuned into the frequency that we broadcast, and then I have a microphone and an iPod, and you can select tracks and turn the volume up and down, and it works incredibly well. Like, we've done 80 of these parties all over the world in the last 8 years, and if you have the boom boxes right in there with you, it just creates an amazing, awesome sounding experience. But first we got to start with the history. So the origins of this whole thing are, I grew up in a small town in northern Ontario, and growing up there we didn't realize it, but we were extremely crazy. Like, it was just all about getting as drunk as you could, and we would just climb trees until they snapped, break bottles over our heads, like so many fights. It was really exciting and a lot of fun. And eventually, when we grew up a little bit, we moved out to Vancouver, and we were pretty bored with the party scene there. We went to the bar, and there were all these rules, and it was expensive. So what happened was I had an old boombox. It's a pretty funny story. I came home sometime in the 1990s, and I wanted a CD player so bad. And I got home, my dad had purchased a new boombox, but all it had was a single cassette, and I was very disheartened. But it had inputs for a CD player on the back, so when I got my first iPod Touch back in 1996 in a bank promotion, realized we could plug it in to the back of this boombox, and then we just started strapping it onto our bicycles and going all over Vancouver, having the most amazing times and inspiring adventures. One of those moments was in Vancouver. There's a kind of like a Skid Row part of town where it's just a very bad scene, and people are out there all night long. Like, you'll see people injecting heroin and like bleeding all over the street. It's totally crazy. But we went through there and we were playing the Dirty Dancing soundtrack. I've had the time of my life. And we went down, and everyone on both sides of the street just started singing along. It was just an incredible moment. And on one of these bike rides, we had two boom boxes. Both of our iPods died, and then had the idea to tune them both into the same local radio station, and it made a really cool distributed sound effect. And that's when it was kind of this eureka moment where I was like, what if we got our own transmitter, became our own radio station, and got hundreds of boom boxes together? So that's what we did. Our first DDP was just on the beach in Vancouver with a tiny little transmitter. Wasn't portable at all, but it was an amazing scene. And then we pieced together a more substantial one. It had a range of a couple city blocks. And Halloween 2009 was the first one. We had about 15 friends all wearing banana suits, about 15 boom boxes, and we just went and we took over the town, and it was the most fun I think any of us had ever had. It's not like watching a traditional show on a stage. Like, everyone that has the boombox is an integral component of the party, and you meet people along the way, and you have these awesome, super fun interactions. At the start, though, it was just me and my crazy friends, and we were just getting as drunk as we could, like skiing down escalators and flipping off these deadly towers into shallow water. And it was awesome, but it had to evolve. And during the Olympics, a few months later, I guess our initial party was 20 people, and then the Olympics happened 6 months later. And between those times, Tom and I, my friend who I started it with, we were just like, wow, this is the coolest, most amazing thing. We have to blow this up as big as we can. This thing's gonna take over the world. So between then, we threw as many parties as we could, and then during the Olympics, it just exploded. The first one was a few thousand people. Everyone was dressed in red and white. A lot of people were thinking the Olympics are stupid. People in Vancouver tend to hate on a lot of fun things. It's also called No Fun City. But we completely transformed it, and I think we're kind of responsible for kicking off this amazing party spirit that endured throughout the whole 2 weeks of the Olympics. And by the time we threw the final one, there was about 20,000 people. So this thing had grown like 20,000 times in size within 6 months. And it was also during the Olympics that we had our first real interaction with the police. Like initially we thought, well, we're doing this pirate radio thing, what's going to happen? The police are going to shut us down. But during the Olympics, they're like, this is okay. We just want to help make sure everyone's safe and help facilitate this. And we were just like blown away that they weren't just going to crack down and ruin our fun. So that was a really interesting thing that happened during the Olympics. And the other was, instead of just a close group of like young people, we saw just these amazing interactions where it would be like crust punks dancing with like little Asian girls, just like punk teenagers, just like people that would never ever normally interact or speak to each other in society, just having these amazing moments of just communal fun. So we realized more and more we had something amazing on our hands, and we had to keep it going and evolving. So we'd taken it about as far as we could in Vancouver, and our next objective was to do a tour, and that was across Canada. And initially we set up a bunch of Facebook events just to gauge what the interest would be like in each province. And we were gonna just do this as a teaser, and then the next year we'd throw the party, but these events just blew up. Like in places like Saskatoon, there was like 6,000 people signed up, ready to go. Winnipeg, so we were like, all right, we gotta find a way. You from Winnipeg? Nice. Nice hat. So yeah, we figured we didn't have any money, and there was this new thing kind of emerging at that time called crowdfunding, which no one was really aware of. Kickstarter didn't work in Canada back then, so we had to go with Indiegogo. And I've been very supportive and fascinated by the whole open source movement from way back in the day, I guess probably since I discovered the Wikipedia in early 2000s. And with this project, I always wanted to embody the open source ethos. So when I discovered crowdfunding, I was like, this is amazing. This is a revolutionary tool. Like, we don't need to sell out to some corporate sponsor and brand their logos all over the party. This is a decentralizing fundraising mechanism. So we set up crowdfunders in each city for $4,000, and we were like, this will be a cinch. Like, there's thousands of people signed up, no worries. And I think we raised $4,000 total on the whole thing, lost about 10 grand. But it was an amazing adventure. Like, the first night we arrived in Saskatoon, and it was just like a scene out of a movie. We were down at this Fountain of Youth thing, and then just like all these crowds just started coming over the hills. And there was like, I don't know how many thousand people. We walked by a hotel, and someone called it in as a riot. Somehow the police hadn't even caught wind of this. And so the police showed up, and there was all these rumors swirling around that statues were getting destroyed and people were getting raped. And I was like, oh God, I guess this is the end. But that was all just hearsay. Never happened. And we talked to the police and smoothed things over, didn't get any tickets, and we headed on. Next stop was Winnipeg on a Monday night. It was huge. And we just kept going all across Canada, and everywhere we went, the parties were successfully thrown. We found out later that the police were so impressed with how we handled the Saskatoon situation. We had, at this point too, the banana suits had kind of become a staple. So our whole crew was, we called them the Elite Banana Task Force, and they wore these banana suits that had a high tip on them, so anyone could see. And we'd say over the mic, if you need help with your boombox, find a banana. They're expertly trained in fixing boomboxes. So we had these elite bananas cleaning up garbage, talking to the police, and the Saskatoon police actually called ahead. We found out at the end, after being petrified of being shut down at everyone, they called ahead and said, these guys are cool, let them do their party. So it was a huge loss of money, but it was an amazing experience, and we saw, that was the other thing too, is that people were, initially they're like, oh, you can't. In the prairies, it's insane. Like, they're just going to wreck your boom boxes. It's not going to work. The police are different there. And all along, I was like, I think people are fundamentally all right. If you approach with the right intentions, it'll all work out. And it did all work out. And we got back to Vancouver through another gigantic party in the snow on the 1-year anniversary of the Olympics. At this point, I had falling out with the original Tom. Won't go into details, but there have been many Toms since that time. And at this time also, I was just, my mind always seeks to analyze, I guess, and philosophize about things, and I was just fascinated by this weird sociological experiment that we had on our hands that we were just trying out everywhere we went, and I wanted to get down to the essence of partying. So I started writing a thing called How to Party Right. And eventually it evolved into a thing called The 7 Commandments of Successful Partying, aka the Party Manifesto, where it defines partying as forgetting who you are while remembering what you are, and further saying, it is the complete loss of the social conditioning that makes adult life monotonous and depressing and has the power to be a transformational spiritual experience. And the 7 elements of successful partying are clothing, so costumery, props. This is a party plant, and we just thought it would be hilarious to bring plants out to the parties, and you wouldn't believe how people take to these things. Like, they'll just be shaking them and carrying them and having the best time. And it's a great icebreaker for, like, one amazing moment was we were doing a party at this open source tech conference, and there was this older guy who looked like pretty bashful dude, like not a party guy, but he just, it was a smaller plant, and he just like carried it all night. And he had like the biggest grin on his face. And then at one point we put on this Deadmau5 song, and there's this, I wasn't there when it happened, but there's this amazing shot where he just puts down the plant and he does this, like, he just like looks into the camera and does this deliberate, like, I can't do the dance, but he does this wicked dance. But anyway, for him it was, he probably would have been too scared to join the party without the prop there. So that's the power of props. The third element is music. Next level partying requires the infectious, high energy stuff that will force everyone to sing and dance. And we feel that to be booty bass, Eurodance, party metal, jock jams, and choice hard rock. And we'll also do stuff like slow dances. We'll play like super intense stuff and then play a slow dance. We'll do music, like soundtracks, like epic film scores, like the Rocky theme when we're running upstairs. Basically just trying to make it like a guided musical adventure through the streets. Fourth element is dancing. And you might think dancing is hard and requires practice. Not so. Just stop thinking, let go, and allow the music to be your master. You will instantly be having fun and feeling good, and others will be impressed and inspired to dance also. Fifth element is behavior. As children, we constantly climb on, jump off, and explore everything. We want to run, scream, sing, dance, and play as hard as our bodies will allow. We are fearlessly responding to nature's divine programming, which terminal consumer culture works very hard to subvert and destroy by incessantly training us to sit still and be quiet and follow the rules and dress and act identically, so that we can join the labor force and reproduce another batch who will do the same. It destroys our natural fun-seeking creative impulses, and is the reason so many are depressed and afraid to sing or dance or deviate from the norm. Overcoming this conditioning is a formidable challenge. Partying can get us there. The sixth element is location/atmosphere. For capital P partying, I don't believe it can really occur in a static location. At least in Western society, there's always all kinds of rules, tickets, bouncers, that sort of thing. And you always have to be careful about destroying the place. When you're out in the streets, you can constantly be moving and get as crazy as you want. The seventh element is alcohol. And it's kind of been a weird tightrope walk to do these parties in public, because obviously in Canada, there's liquor laws. You're not allowed to have alcohol out in the open. So what we always did was we said in all our Facebook event pages, if you bring alcohol, just please be discreet about it. Put it in a big gulp or whatever. And people generally respected that. But what we also heard over and over was that people would show up and they'd be like, I came and I had like a backpack full of beer, but I didn't drink the beer because I was having too much fun and I forgot to drink the beer. And like, I don't even dance, but my feet are so sore because I danced all night. And so the conclusion we come around to is that if you create a party that incorporates all of these elements, you can create a capital P party experience that will hopefully naturally liberate people from their inhibitions, and you won't be reliant on drugs or alcohol to get you to that place of transcendence and being able to connect on this fundamental human level with other people. And I wholeheartedly believe that, but we've never taken any kind of draconian stance saying you can't drink, you can't do drugs. And it's always worked out incredibly well so far. So that's the party manifesto. And yeah, after that, we done our Canadian tour, so it was time to do a USA tour. We had a new Tom who was American and helped us get our stuff over the border. And that's a long story of very carefully figuring things out. And going to the States, it was the same situation where everyone was like, you can't go to the States. Like, it's a police state right now. Like, there was all this Occupy stuff happening. They're like, you can't go to Detroit, you're going to get shot. Like, this isn't going to work. The police are different. But everywhere we went, a few of the parties got shut down early because people called us in as Occupy. Yes, sir. Do you have a mic?
I was wondering, do you call this in sometimes, like let the police know, or the city or some sort of officials that we're going to be coming through the town?
Yeah, we kind of play it by ear. If it's not going to be crossing any main streets or there's any kind of traffic danger, we don't always call it in. But yeah, sometimes I'll just call like an hour or two before and I'll say we're doing this event. It's like a family-friendly thing. We got everything under control. We've been doing this for years all across the country, and sometimes they send out officers to chaperone the party. And yeah, they always respect that, and it's been amazing. Like, so many nights they've just come out and giving us a full like impromptu escort through the streets with like their sirens and lights going. I don't think they're allowed to, but sometimes they dance a little bit along with us. And it's amazing when you have a mic that can talk through all these stereos. It's like a totally unique form of communication and crowd control. Like with one megaphone, you can't really communicate with the whole crowd, but with this, you can talk through it all. So if the police show up, sirens on, I'll be like, hey, the police are here to party with us, 3 cheers, and then they roll up and everyone's cheering and like, yeah. And the police are just like, what is this? We've never been cheered before. Like, all we do is deal with bullshit all day. So you can do tricks like that to make this thing work out, and it's works incredibly well. After the USA tours, we came to Burning Man for the first time in 2012, and I was doing research on it on the website, learning about the 10 principles, and I was just blown away by all the parallels between what we'd been developing and the Burning Man culture that had been developing for the last 20 years or whatever it's been. This is the DDP field manual, by the way. Still a work in progress. And when I was talking about Burning Man, a lot of people were like, oh, that's some kind of desert drug orgy. That looks really weird. But in here I've written, upon closer inspection, Burning Man is no mere desert drug orgy, but rather a radically open and decentralized social experiment at the vanguard of modern cultural evolution! Exclamation mark. Unlike a traditional festival, Burning Man is a peer-produced, collaborative undertaking wherein the participants are the performers, and bringing people together and setting them free is the fundamental overriding objective. As with the DDP, everyone pools their talents and energies to create and refine an ever-evolving manifestation of their heart's desires. An anarchic explosion of collaborative creativity, best described as open source partying. So yeah, I was fascinated by this thing, and it's kind of like, I mean, we've met so many burners that have gotten involved in the parties over the years, and basically what we do is a Burning Man on wheels. And just coming here and witnessing how this anarchic community can form and self-govern, and how it just creates this temporary autonomous zone of just happiness and creativity and connection. It's just totally mind-blowing. And I was just thinking as hard as I could about how we could employ these principles and apply Burning Man DDP culture to the greater world. And on the note of open source culture, I have a couple quotes here that are really good. Open source everything makes truth rather than violence the currency of power. Robert David Steele. And by Buckminster Fuller, you never change anything by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And that's what we're doing with the open source movement and the DDP and Burning Man. I think we're building a new world, creating a new reality, and doing it responsibly and respectfully. And I think by doing that, I mean, we can't just go up to people and say, you should live this way or party this way, but if you can bring them here and inspire them and have this immersive experience, or within a DDP, people just light up and they can see so many new potentials for life and society. Also within the DDP field manual, it goes into the history of partying. And I read a really interesting book called Dancing in the Streets by Barbara Ehrenreich, where she talks about how when the colonialists were traveling around and colonizing the world, everywhere they went, they discovered that all these tribes had these ecstatic party rituals and party rites where the whole community would come together and they'd create music and do these amazing rhythmic dances, and this was a way to create this spiritual merger and bond the community. And when they saw that, they're like, oh, this is some sort of satanic thing, and did their best to stamp it out. And obviously in modern Western culture, you see there's all these repressive laws to do with drugs, alcohol, noise. You need a permit, and everything is basically commodified, ticketed, soulless, as with most aspects of what I refer to in here as terminal consumer culture, which is basically the centralized society that we live in. So if you analyze it from that point of view, you'll see central government, central monetary system, central media, central education system, centralize everything. And it takes a long time to delve deep into it, but I believe the message of this medium, centralization, is control, repression, fear, dissociation, and yeah, basically since the dawn of agriculture, things are becoming more centralized, closed. There's laws restricting even playing music. Like, it's not legal for us to play a song in public because of copyright laws. Like, it's insane the amount to which all these institutions and laws just tear the soul out of our societies and drive us apart and create this atmosphere of hate and fear and paranoia. So that's why I've been doing this and losing money at it, and still completely fired up on it, and I'm going to do it till the day I die because it's exciting. And as it says up here, this is an acceptance movement, not a resistance. So I think pretty much every revolution throughout history has been fighting some kind of power and then replacing it with some other new centralized power that just gets corrupted, because obviously power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So this whole open decentralization movement and the DDP and obviously Burning Man is all about acceptance, inclusivity, opting in. If you don't like it, fork it, build something new. People can opt over there if they want to. I have a quote here from a person named Aldous Huxley. Page 75. This thing's 160 pages long, and I'm trying to get it done for 3 years. Hopefully soon, and it will be available, of course, without any copyright restrictions to be shared. But there's a great quote here from Aldous Huxley, the guy who wrote Brave New World and was Stores of Perception. Very cool dude. He writes, ritual dances provide a religious experience that seems more satisfying and convincing than any other. It is with their muscles that humans most easily obtain knowledge of the divine. And that's where you start getting into the more metaphysical aspects of dancing and partying. And this kind of incredible openness, and ultimately what I believe is this love that can spontaneously be created between strangers when you're not dressed in your suit or you're in some sort of identity that you've tried to create or had imposed through all the social conditioning we're exposed to. Like, you come out to Burning Man, people are dressed like dinosaurs or they're naked or whatever's going on, and instantly you have this acceptance. And I mean, there's a lot of different definitions of love. One of them is, I forget how the quote goes, but love is just understanding by another name or something like that. And I think you can have, in these capital P party moments, instances of love and connection between people. And I think this is an amazingly powerful medium to be experimenting in. And on that note, within society, there's a lot of different institutions and ways to rally people. Typically, it's when you have a common enemy, like political rival or a sports team, people to get together and they're rooting for their tribe or whatever. And the unique thing about partying is it is a common goal, and when it's done totally inclusively, something that everyone can participate in, everyone can get involved in. And yeah, that is why the field manual is also called A Battle Plan for World Peace. And so yeah, it's basically outlines what I believe are the steps to achieve world peace, or as close as we can get. So basically, there's a lot of ICO. Well, first I should get into, now that we've toured Canada and the US and Europe, we want to do something called the Global Party Pandemic. And basically that is, are we running low on time? 10 minutes. Okay, here's how to save the world in 10 minutes or less. So the Global Party Pandemic, this is an open source strategy guide that teaches everyone the philosophy behind this thing and the technical aspects of how to create your own DDP. It's pretty complicated to build a transmitter and find these old boom boxes and fit them together and put in batteries. So we also want to build something called the Social Stereo, which will be a wireless digital mesh networking boombox that can just instantly connect to an infinite number of other boomboxes, sync up, and that way you can have an entire city or an entire country or an entire world partying together. So we'll release the manual and have people setting up autonomous DDP party cells all over the world. I like to use military imagery for this thing because I think it's funny, and this is a battle plan for world peace. And I believe I never say like we're partying for peace. I say partying is peace incarnate. We're waging peace. We're waging love, and this is a incredible catalyst that allows us to do that for the very first time. So, to raise the money for this thing, ICOs are, it's a crazy thing that's happening everywhere now. But back in 2014, we created a video discussing how we wanted to do an ICO for peace bonds issued on the Dogecoin blockchain. And how that'll work is, back in the day, governments used to sell war bonds to raise money to fight their wars. And hopefully you'd get paid back after the war was won. If you lost, I don't know what happened. But we want to issue maybe $1 million worth of peace bonds, slam all this stuff together, do the global party pandemic, host a simultaneous global dance party where everyone is united in a capital P party moment that will be a crowning achievement for humanity, and win the Nobel Peace Prize for partying. And during our Nobel Prize acceptance speech, make the proposition that for the next year, every country should allocate half of their defense budget to partying for a year. That'll get the whole word. I might have mixed up the chronology of this, but you get the idea. So everyone will be partying together. We'll win the Nobel Prize again. Everyone gets paid back twice on their investment, because the Peace Prize is 1.3 million, so you might get like 2.6x on your money, and then things will be looking pretty good. And I'm dead serious about all this stuff, and it's astounding how many people, when I talk about this, they're like, that could actually work. I believe in this thing. And there are some interesting anecdotes on this tip. It's kind of a lesser known, or maybe most people, I don't know, who knows it. We'll find out. We'll do a show of hands. In 1914, at the start of World War I, there was this horrible trench warfare. And there was, I don't know, Germans and French or British. They were lined up in these trenches, like shooting at each other. And then on Christmas Eve, they had this moment where they started singing songs, one side, the other side, and then they came out and they were sharing alcohol and like dancing and merrymaking, and then like these people that were killing each other moments ago were united in this kind of moment of what you might call partying together. Of course, the generals caught wind and they're like, this is abominable, like we'll kill you if you try and make friends with your enemy. And then I don't think it happened again throughout the war. They just shot each other and died in the mud for 5 years and accomplished nothing. But that's a very interesting and inspiring story, I think. And another one that not many people have heard of is, it was in northern England. There was some kind of a riot where all these young dudes were throwing rocks at the British. And then some guy had the foresight to put ice cream music on through the loudspeaker. And apparently everyone just started laughing, dropped their rocks. The whole thing was completely defused. So I believe that capital P partying and the culture that we and Burning Man are evolving has the potential to turn the world upside down in a very good way. And my life is dedicated to achieving this goal. And I hope you guys will join the party and we'll do this thing. And not just partying, but every other aspect of the decentralized revolution can be used to accomplish this. And I believe this, and I've said this since 2011. I got up in front of everyone at the Occupy movement in Vancouver, and I gave a speech called "The Future Will Not Be Centralized," and I said, you guys need to stop pointing fingers at bankers and governments and rich people. Like, we now have the tools, like with Bitcoin and everything else, we have the tools to build a whole new movement, whole new revolution, whole new world. Stop fighting the existing power structures. Let's make them obsolete, build something brand new. Unfortunately, no one really listened at that time, but the advancements since then, the last 5 years, are incredibly heartening, and I think we're closer than ever, but it is a battle against time. I go into that in another thing I've written over here called Privacy is the Enemy, because blockchain and every other tool that we're working with to build this revolution, instead of freeing us all, could be used to subjugate us all. And an example of that is some crazy dictatorship with a lot of money. We now have the technology to create armies of tiny weaponized drones with cameras that can use facial recognition technology to instantly go out, subjugate an entire population, and basically make resistance impossible. So I think we need to focus on making this happen. And on that note, on Friday at the end of these talks, we're doing one called An Idea Whose Time Has Come. And I believe that decentralizing the world is an idea whose time has come. And I think we need to figure out a really incredible marketing campaign to get the whole world on board with that and doing that, instead of just endlessly fighting about right versus left or whatever. And building a new world where people don't just impose their wills on each other. An interesting analogy for that is in Bitcoin, you've got a 51% attack, where if people get 51% of the mining power, they can attack and like fuck up the blockchain. But I don't know who said it first, but democracy is also the original 51% attack, where 51% of the population can say, we're doing it this way now, and then that's imposed on everyone else, whether they like it or not. And then 4 years later, who knows, if you like that, your worst enemy can come to power and ruin everything. So yeah, I'm excited about all these new technologies and about partying. We're also going to do a mini DDP with these boom boxes on bicycles on Friday night, and I hope you guys will enjoy. And is there time for any questions?
Well, I do have one
Is
question.
Galia here yet?
So,
Ma'am?
well, I was just wondering what kind of media coverage you've been able to get and what the feedback you got from that was.
I mean, people reporting on the parties, or... There's been a decent amount of media coverage, but this is a very complicated thing to convey to people, especially people who haven't been to Burning Man. And like it took me an hour to go through the history and how it works and how it creates these temporary autonomous zones. So it's a hard thing to concisely explain, and that's why I've also been trying to finish this DDP documentary. We filmed thousands of hours of footage over the years, and I think it's going to take something like that to really express what's going on here and how it has the capacity to bring about world peace. And the other gigantic struggle has been, this thing has been losing money for the last 8 years. And I'm very hopeful that some of the nouveau crypto riche will, I mean, also when you understand decentralization, you can see that this is an integral component in the power of it, and why we've always stuck to open source principles and haven't got sponsors. Like, we've had options or offers from Coke Zero one time. They're like, we want to do this simultaneous European broadcast, and we want you to be ambassadors for Coke Zero. And I wrote back a nice letter saying, we don't really take on extraneous corporate sponsors, especially if they produce toxic beverages that are destroying humanity. But yeah, there's been some really cool media coverage, but nothing. The thing with media coverage too is people will read it and then forget about it. So if we had, like, I want to do with the documentary a web series and then an ongoing vlog that chronicles what's going on, but we really need financing to hire a team to make that all happen. So I think we need to do our own media coverage, because it's just such a hard thing to convey. Sir?
Yeah, so what...
Is there another mic? We need the mics. Here's a mic. I must insist on the mic for audio recording.
All right, yeah. So, was there any other countries, except of Canada and US, you already made it in?
We did our tour across Greece, which was London, Paris, Berlin, Turin, Venice, and Athens. And we just recently, this is a longer story, but we went to the D10E Decentralization Conference in Tel Aviv, Israel. And we did one there as well. And everywhere we've gone, people have said, like, you can't do it there. This is different. Like, people are different. The police are different. Like, you're going to Israel, there's, like, police, military police with guns. Like, it's a terror zone. Like, you can't do it there. But everywhere we've gone, it's been fine. Like, the police didn't even talk to us when we went to Israel. And that was also kind of an opportunity that came up at the last minute, and kind of a fact-finding mission, because the Muslim world, the Middle East, is kind of a very big question mark. I've been to 80 or so countries around the world, but not much travel there. So all I've gotten is kind of hearsay, and I feel you cannot understand a place or the culture until you've been there. So we got one-way tickets to Tel Aviv, and the goal was to explore there and try and understand what the situation was. Especially one of the other things we've always wanted to do with the global party pandemic is going to parties where there's a lot of strife and division, and use partying as a device to bring people together who've traditionally hated each other or been divided, or also places where they've had a natural disaster to boost spirits. So one of my dreams with that was to go to West Bank, Gaza Strip, those kind of areas, and see if we could bring Israelis and Palestinians together. And it may not be the most hopeful story on that note, but so we went there, completely open mind, to see what was going on, what it was like. We spent a few weeks in Tel Aviv, and we went into the West Bank area, and later on we spent a week in a Palestinian refugee camp in Bethlehem. And it was, I don't know if we have time for this story. Is Galia here?
I think we have a little more time. I think she's on her way.
Would you like to hear an interesting story?
Let's do it.
So me and my best friend, David Niven, it's too bad he's not here so you could look at him. He builds these tassels, shorts, everything.
He's a really cool dude.
He's a really cool dude. He's our mystical hype man and my personal spirit animal. He brought me back from the brink of not believing in things anymore when I came home and he was wearing this giant turkey suit a while ago. That's another long story. So me and him were cruising around the Middle East trying to figure out what the potentials were for doing dance parties to unite people, and in countries where we'd heard that the women and men aren't allowed to mix or dance together. So we found ourselves, through a series of circumstances, in this Palestinian refugee camp. And we were there for like an hour, and we were out in this intersection near the place we were staying, and all of a sudden we hear these like sound grenades go off, and there's this attack happening. Apparently it had happened the last couple nights, and we were just like, whoa, what's going on? And the guys that we were staying with in this camp were like, come, you must come with us. And then we went back, and we were looking at the balcony, and I guess it's hard to know exactly. I never jump to conclusions on anything without getting good information on what was going on, but we had been told that the army would come, not every night, but at random, and they would break into the businesses and take the security camera footage from in there. And it didn't really make sense, but that's what we were told, that they would come in and have some sort of an intervention every night. And every time they would come in, all the young men would run out and they would throw rocks, like hundreds of guys. So we're up watching, and just all these guys throwing rocks. And we were kind of watching this scene, and in my head I was like there was adrenaline going. It was super intense. And when I've talked about this stuff, I've always been, people are like, you're gonna die, you can't just do that. And I've said, we're not just gonna blunder in banana suits and get shot. Like, we're not idiots. So me and Dave were watching this scene play out in front of us, and we just got to this place, adrenaline was going, and I was just like, this has been going on for like 70 years. And we'd learned from people that like all the Israelis we talked to, they're like, I can't go there, they'll kill me. And the Palestinians, like, there's a very complicated situation with their travel rights. I won't get into that because I don't know for sure the details, but pretty much most of the interactions seem to be just between soldiers and angry people throwing rocks, and then you just have this horrible interaction. So I was looking at this and I was like, I guess it was Dave that suggested it, and we're a good team because I'm very methodical and thoughtful and forward planning, and he's just this free spirit, crazy, impulsive dude. And he's like, we should get the banana suits on, go in there with the boom box, the boom case, which is super loud. And I was like, maybe we should. So we started getting the banana suits on, and we filmed all this stuff, and we're like, yeah, we're both ready to die for this experiment, even though this is the stupid thing I said I would never do. So we're all suited up, ready to go, and then some of the guys come back and they're really worried. They're like, no, you can't go, it's crazy. And we were like, okay, we won't go. And we didn't go. And the next day, they were not very impressed with our actions. These stupid white guys that showed up and thought they could just have a dance party in this riot. Like, what the fuck are you thinking, weirdos? So we sat down and I explained for an hour the whole history of the DDP and our vision for this thing, and got into the whole decentralization thing and the coming, all these new technologies of surveillance and oppression. And I was saying, like, this isn't going to be possible much longer. Like, you can't, no one is going to have any sort of privacy, and there's going to be drones with cameras and every movement is going to be recorded. I was like, the situation needs to be figured out, and I don't know. And it was really eye-opening talking to these guys. Like, it was an amazing crash course in the situation and then their own perspectives on the whole thing. And some of the guys we talked to were just like, I don't support any sort of, like, there's programs that bring Israelis and Palestinians together, and they're like, we don't like those programs, we don't support them, we don't want any sort of normalization with our enemy, we'll never negotiate from a place of being oppressed, and we're just not going to have this conversation. I guess, yeah, that was the reason we were there, was because we met an Israeli guy who had an idea to go to Jerusalem, the old city, and there's 4 quarters there. There's Muslim, Jewish, Christian, and Armenian, which is another version of Christianity. And the idea was that we would have 4 different DDPs that would start in each quarter, and we would have people, like, you're probably not going to get traditional religious people to just pick up a boombox and start dancing. So we would have people dressed in the traditional dress from those cultures, and we'd play music from those cultures, bring them all in together to some central point, and hopefully create some kind of moving moment where we use partying to bring people together. But also with the DDP, I have been very careful to avoid taking any kind of a political stance ever, because that is divisive, and we always want to be 100% inclusive with this thing. And when I was talking to these Palestinian guys the day after and explaining our idea, they were like, we would never support that. We don't want to do that. No. And then I realized, like, that is taking a very strong political stance, so I guess we gotta nix that idea. So that was basically what we learned very rapidly by going there. So I don't think that place is quite ready for a dance party to bring people together. But I haven't given up on the idea, and I do want to learn more about the situation. And in that situation, too, it's another example of just centralized power. Like, the political parties in charge of each country derive their power from pointing to an enemy and instilling fear, and so much of it is also driven by an economy that is geared to advancing military power, just like the states all over the world. So through all these decentralized applications, hopefully we can build a new world where these problems will not continue to be problems, and we can build a great new world. And also on that, a lot of people ask, like, how do you reform societies? You've got these Like if you made a more open society, you've got so many victimless crimes. Like some places it's illegal to be gay, it's illegal to use drugs. There's a million illegal things where if you opened up, you go to jail. So I think the way forward is to build some new experimental societies. Just got back from the Startup Societies Summit in San Francisco, and they're all about seasteading, temporary, I don't know what they're called, zones in Honduras. So it's really interesting to see. Like you come to Burning Man and we build a city in a hostile environment in like a few days. So if you went somewhere that was less hostile and using new decentralized technologies like 3D printed housing, you can print a house for $10,000. You can print a city for next to nothing. And then with decentralized energy, which is solar power, you can have your power. You can use that to do aquaponics and vertical gardening with LED lights. There's another piece to that. Anyway, you can have your house, your power, your food, all the basic fundamental stuff, and you can build a whole new society. And if you can wrangle it, experiment with new laws and new social operating systems. The one I would like to opt into would be a society based on the non-aggression principle, which is basically you can't exert or you can't initiate force against another person or their property. I believe that's a good fundamental rule to govern society. And I go deep into all that stuff. And this other thing I wrote over there called Privacy is the Enemy, which is a provocatively titled thing. I'm definitely not anti-privacy, but as a filmmaker and someone who just kind of keeps up with emergent trends, you can see that we're getting to this crazy point in the world where, like, part of the reason I wrote that was I knew this stuff was happening, but then the Snowden revelations came out, and I was like, wow, this stuff is further along than I thought. But basically, I think everyone at this point operates under the assumption that whatever they do online is going to end up in some database. It'll be seen somewhere. But now that everyone has, I don't have my phone on me, but everyone's carrying a phone, high-definition camera, linked to the internet. There's other cameras everywhere. Basically, it's safe to assume that wherever you are, someone could be watching or listening, and that technology is advancing very, very rapidly. Another one a lot of people aren't aware of is they've got these crazy drones that can hover over a city. They were doing this in Compton a couple of years ago, where they would just be constantly recording every action that took place, and they could rewind history. They can zoom right in. They can identify who you are by your gait, like the way you walk. So basically, all the tools to create a completely oppressive society that can subjugate probably the entire human race are coming to the fore, and you've seen countless examples throughout history, like the Iron Curtain, East Germany. Like, there is this constant drive within centralized power structures for people who are sociopathic and just driven by this lust to dominate and exert power. Like, they always go to these centers because that's what they like to do. So as long as you have these power structures, you're going to get corrupt people at the top, and you're going to get horribly oppressive and evil things happening. So I think it is a race against time to use these tools to build a new open society. And I mean, I don't like the notion of everything I do being filmed or anything like that, but I think I don't see any other options to build an open and decentralized world. And there's a lot to that whole vision, and that thing I wrote over there is 33 pages long. I have a few copies printed out if anyone wants to read it, and I'd love to discuss this stuff further and link up with anyone who wants to help make this stuff happen. Because we have to. Sir? You need a microphone, I'm sorry. There's no other way.
Hey, yeah. So can you just describe in maybe minute to 5 of, like, I want to make a DDB in Ukraine, in Kiev. Like, what steps, what should I start from? Like, yeah, building the stuff and finding the old boomboxes and making them work. Like maybe you have some advices on how to make it happen.
Yeah, the parties we do, the transmitter, the company that made them, called Ramsey out of New York, they made this perfect, amazing transmitter. They just went out of business, or they discontinued them. So we're looking into new transmitter technologies, but those are very complicated and tricky to make. But I found these new ones. They're like $40, little handheld thing, and that'll do, I don't know what, an area maybe 500 feet. So it's good enough. You can plug in a mic, and in Canada at least, there's all these electronics recycling places where people just throw these out endlessly because no one wants tapes or CDs anymore. So we've gone through hundreds, thousands of these things. So I don't know what the situation is there, but just spread the word, get people hunting in their attics and wherever. So you get the stereos, transmitter, you need to get some batteries to put in there. That is a corporate sponsor that we have taken on in the past. Is Rayovac reached out a while ago, and they're like, we love what you're doing, we'd love to support, we don't ask for anything in return except like a thank you on social media. And I was like, well, we're broke as hell, so. But not only that, like, they're not asking for us to really compromise, because we need batteries, and Railvac's kind of a cool, funny company from the 80s, so we accepted batteries from them. And ideally, that's kind of the stuff I want to look into, is like, oh yeah, we have, I live in this funny leather shop, or above it, in Vancouver. It's this amazing building. I've been there for the last 10 years, and as a documentarian, we've filmed everything. Like the first DDP, it pops up in my kitchen. We're preparing all the stereos, and then all the key crucial moments, like preparing for every tour. It all starts within this apartment. And now, after 10 years, there's the option to take over the top floor and the bottom floor, which is this giant, it used to be a rugby club too, so it's this wicked wide open area, and I really want to make that global headquarters for DDP and decentralizing the world, make a bunch of barracks and have this as a hilarious military operation. And it's about 10 grand a month to rent the place, so the next few months, we're going to take it over January 1st, so trying to find funding for that. But that will be a major supply line, artery for people that want to do DDPs independently all over the world. So we'll be sourcing and preparing boom boxes, banana suits, all the integral components. We're going to make these armbands, get everyone in the world wearing these, made by Niven. They are the ultimate party accoutrement for fist pumping or anything. When you get them on pants, you have no idea the impact. And were there any more questions on how it could be done? The field manual has like 80 pages of details on all this.
And we can find this online?
It's not done quite yet. Life took a turn for the uneasy over the last 3 years. Like, I was trying to get this done for Burning Man 2014 when we did Camp Dogecoin, and it's been crazy time, but gonna go home and get this done. And yeah, it has diagrams on how to piece everything together, and we want to make a whole open source community online. We have a website. You're here. You missed everything. Nothing. It's on video. Good. What do you want to talk about? What is blockchain? How do I blockchain?
For permanent pieces of information to an accounting ledger that everyone shares. All right, so is Galia not here? Is that the case?
Yes.
She let us all down. She's here?
She's not here, so yeah, I thought
We're
we
still-
can,
we're still
Griff was
doing
suggesting we can
Questions
definitely
about
open up,
DDP stuff.
yeah, questions.
That's fine, but I can talk about whatever they want to talk about.
What do you guys want to talk about or hear about?
If there's any things we can talk about that, I can explain most of the concepts generally. Where do we want to
First, are there any more questions about DDP / saving the world? What time on Friday? I'm saying Camp Decentral at 11 p.m. Come on down and bring your bicycle. We have These things are called Soundbox. It was a cool crowdfunding campaign these guys in Denmark did, and apparently it's the loudest portable speaker in the world, and that may be correct. They're loud as hell, and it's going to be very fun to get out there and rage with these things. We're going to be playing some stuff you don't normally hear at Burning Man, which is heavy metal, booty bass, and other really fun genres. Any more questions?
Okay, let's give Gary a big round of applause.